Hey guys, welcome back to Tea Garden. Today we're going to talk about more recommendations. These ones being recommendations about working with plants. I do have quite a few books on plants, and specifically tea. I have a few tea books. I need to go grab those in a second. But I'll put these books down, then I'll go grab those tea books. Alright, I got all the books I wanted to get. There's quite a big pile, so I'll move them slowly. Oh goodness, this is all getting moved quite a lot. Okay. Okay, so I actually really love flowers and plants. I started working with plants later on in my path, within the last 7 years or so, because honestly I was obsessed with animals and then animal gods like the Egyptian gods. So I came to love plants later down the road, which is fine. I actually started working in a tea shop, and that's when I started to experience the benefits of tea and the flavors and just getting to love the scent and aroma of plants. So I'll just go through my pile of books and tell you a little bit about each of these, and maybe go through the table of contents with you, and we'll just talk about them a little bit. We'll start with one I got while I was working at the tea shop. So this one's called Healing Teas by Marie Nadine Antal. That's really interesting. This was really in-depth. I loved it. I have another tea book that is more like a coffee table book. It's a picture book, has some nice recipes for healing teas. But this is like a really good guide to tea and the benefits of tea. Let me flip it open. Oh goodness, it's so thin. This book has been around me for a while. Oh goodness, there's your preface. Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. I wonder where the table of contents is. Oh, there it is. There's a page in here. Acknowledgements. Ugh. Okay. All right, let's look through it. All right, this book, when did it come out? 1996. So this is actually one of my older books. So it talks about the traditions of tea. It talks about traditional healing teas, and then modern healing teas. It talks about shopping for teas. It talks about the ABCs of herb cultivation. Nice. And it also talks about the selection of natural medicines for brewing healing teas. So, and conclusions. But it talks about all kinds of things. It talks about the 4 types of tea. Actually, the 5 types. 5 types of tea. Welcome back to the tea shop for me. And as you can tell, I love tea, considering this channel is called Tea Garden. So, okay, let's talk. There are actually around 5 types of tea. 6. There is 4 main types that come from tea leaves, like the traditional tea leaves. There's white tea, there's green tea, there's oolong tea, and there's black tea. I say them in this order because the white tea has no fermentation. It's really raw. It goes through minimal processes. Green tea comes next. It goes through similar processes, but then it goes a little bit farther. Oolong tea takes all the processes of the first 2 teas, which I'm not going to go into depth, and then it ferments a little tiny bit. And then black tea goes through all the processes of the other types of tea and ferments a lot. Black tea has an extremely strong flavor, and it's what we Americans associate with Lipton tea. Lipton tea is black tea. That's traditional. English breakfast is black tea, but it's black tea that was taken from the Orient and made into burnt black tea. That's why it tastes so freaking bitter. While I worked at the tea shop, I had developed a sensitive palate to flavors, especially to bitterness. So I've had really great black tea, like Black Dragon Pearl black teas. I think of the Chinese black tea. So good. And if you make it like an American sweet tea, so good. I miss it, because the tea shop closed and now I'm super sad about it. But someday I will find it again. So those are the 4 types of tea that come from the same plant, just different processes down the line. You should know each one has a healing benefit, but we'll talk about that later. Maybe I'll have an in-depth video on tea. The other teas are herbal tea, which contain no tea leaves, so they have no caffeine. It's just like fruits and spices and other things. So herbal tea has no tea leaves. No ability to give you kidney stones, no ability to give you caffeine. Another type of tea is called rooibos tea, which comes from Africa. It's from a different plant. It's a rooibos bush it comes from. So that has no caffeine as well, but it still gives you a nice tea when you brew it. I think it's called red tea, red rooibos and green rooibos. But rooibos tea is delicious and caffeine free, so no worries there. The last tea is yerba mate from yerba mate plant. It has a ton of caffeine, so watch out if you drink yerba mate. But it's extremely popular in South America because it will give you nearly as much caffeine as coffee, and it's a slower caffeine release, so it lasts longer. Extremely popular. All right, so this was my favorite as far as tea books. I bought it at the store, and look at that beautiful stuff. Look, it says a condition, a benefit, the beneficial herbs, all the way down. Oh, so great. But yeah, healing teas. I love that book so much. All right. Next things I really liked and I looked through, let me get this out, were aromatherapy, because everything smelled so nice in the tea shop. I had to look into aromatherapy. The books I got for this, the books I kept around for it, are The Complete Book of Incense, Oils, and Brews. And it's not exactly aromatherapy, but for a budding witch looking into plant work, this was a lot of fun. After college, I was in a small space, about 3 months, where I didn't have a job and was trying to figure things out. And I tried some of this stuff out, and it was amazing. And then for aromatherapy specifically, I like this book. So this is The Essential Guide to Aromatherapy and Vibrational Healing. It was a lot of fun to read it and kind of go through it and learn a little bit along the way. I actually do mix my own oils for anointing things and for celebrating the gods and rubbing on things. So, the person that wrote The Complete Book of Incense, Oils, and Brews is Scott Cunningham. He is one of my favorite pagan authors. I read him when I first started out, and it was quite amazing. So these two are good, just general scent books when you're working with herbs. All right. Next, we'll talk about more Scott Cunningham, because he actually wrote like 3 books about this. Scott Cunningham's, here we go, Magical Herbalism. So this is all about working with the plants. And yes, it was from Hess Price Books, but the secret craft of something, The Wise, Magical Herbalism by Scott Cunningham. Really good starter book on working with plants and magic, so I like that. Companion to that is Cunningham's Encyclopedia of Magical Herbs. So while not a 101 book, it gives you a bunch of information on those. But I'll go through the table of contents with this one because it's interesting. We can always go through the table of contents of the other ones, but I thought this was interesting. Oh, here we go. Oh, this big. Okay. So this little herbalism book goes through magical tools of the herbalist, a short primer on what magic is, gathering, drying, storing herbs, talks about the language of magical herbalism, talks about things like what these herbs do, which is protection, divination, healing, love, elemental stuff, talks about scented oils and perfumes, incenses, and amulets. So all kinds of things that are interesting. And this actually bleeds over to my Kemetic practices, because in the circles and communities I'm part of, I'm known as the flower priest of Sekhmet. So you might not think that is applicable, but it makes sense in context of my community. So I actually love working with flowers and gods. in all kinds of ways. Oils is just one thing. I also have made in the past herbal or flower amulets, and I dry flowers often and like use them in spell work. So there's all kinds of stuff you can do with it. The last books I'm going to show you are more towards that, using flowers and spells and stuff. So I really like this cute little book. It's called The Book of Flower Spells by Sherilyn Darcy, and it was just a fun little read. It was a nice someone else's perspective, and you can get some ideas from other people's work. So it's fun to just go through and read and get someone else's take on it, get to know someone else's work and get inspired, and like you're with a peer talking, sitting down and just brainstorming stuff. So I really like that for that. And then these books are really a lot of fun. This book was a lot of fun to read. This was one of the first books I read about flower magic. And both this one and The Magic of Trees are by Tess Whitehurst. And I'll go through some of this with you because they both have a similar format. But I really love this book. I might reread this book actually because I really loved it. So it has a bunch of flower associations and information, but it came out in 2013, so it's been a little bit. It talks about orientation of flower magic, which is kind of introduction, talks about some notes about it, and then goes into what the actual flowers are connected to, and it's just pages of flowers. Look at how many flowers. A to, I assume, Z. So A to Y, apparently there are no Z flowers. And then there's some nice appendices about like how to make a flower essence, magical uses, elemental correspondences, planet correspondences. So there's a huge amount of information in these books about flowers and about trees. So if you're into those kinds of things, I highly recommend this for just spell work with flowers. Now, I will say, I should have prefaced with this, but I will say, I am not an herbalist, and I do not, I don't tell people to swallow herbs, and I don't do that to them. Do not use these books for herbalism. Herbalism is different than herbalists and things like that. I mean witchcraft stuff. I do witchcraft stuff with plants. If you want to become an herbalist, an herbalism tradition that is medical, then please go do that into a program. There are programs out there. I do not recommend using these books as a guide to ingestion of herbs or flowers or trees or what have you. Please seek an actual herbalist or herbalism program if you are interested in plants and herbs for medicinal purposes. I mean, the tea is fine, and you can buy wonderful teas from respected online sources or tea sources, tea shops and stuff like that. But don't use what is a spiritual book for ingestion of herbs or reference for ingesting herbs and stuff like that. So please, please, please use common sense when you work with plants and when you're using them in magic versus trying to use them for medicines. All right. All right. And with that, guys, this little talk's over. I know I stammered a little bit, but as I said, these witchy portions of my channel are much more flying by the seat of my pants than the Kemetic chapels and other things. So I hope you all enjoyed, and we will talk again soon. Remember to like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.